Since that incident, I have not shared this with anyone in my current life. I have some good wine and feel like letting my fingers do the talking. I thought I had found the perfect woman. We met during our last year of college at a party and we instantly clicked. She was a stunning blonde with a beautiful tan. She could have been a model like someone similar to Kate Upton. She had all these amazing qualities. She was kind, compassionate, a good listener, and had an active social life with lots of friends. Our friend groups merged seamlessly over the 3 years we knew each other. Some of our friends even started dating each other. Those were some of the best times of my life. I was pursuing a postgraduate degree. She was a model, similar to Kate Upton, with a number of admirable qualities. These included kindness, compassion, good listening skills and an active social life with numerous friends. Over the 3 years we knew each other, our friend groups merged seamlessly, and some of our friends even started dating each other. These were some of the best times of my life. I was pursuing a postgraduate degree in finance, while she had a degree in contractual law. Despite our different academic backgrounds, we both ended up being successful in our respective fields. However, I was not the only one who benefited from our relationship. I was 5 feet 11 inches and weighed around 190 pounds, and I enjoyed going to the gym and staying fit. Despite not being a super athlete, I had a good physique. While she had obtained a degree in contractual law, I had pursued a graduate degree in finance. Despite our disparate academic backgrounds, we both achieved success in our respective fields. I would be remiss if I did not mention that I was also quite attractive. I am 5 feet 11 inches and weighed approximately 190 pounds. I enjoyed going to the gym and staying fit. I may not have been a super athlete, but I had a good physique. My appearance was not particularly striking, and I had not been in many relationships prior to meeting her. We were immediately attracted to each other, and our first encounter led to a lengthy conversation. From there, we began exchanging messages, calls, and weekly dates. Approximately a year later, when I secured a new position, she relocated to my residence. Her family was the relationship flourished, particularly with her mother, although her father was somewhat aloof. It was a fast-paced romance, punctuated by overseas trips, hiking expeditions, and lavish getaways. After 2.5 years of bliss, I proposed and she accepted. I was elated. She assumed control of the wedding planning. We began to consider our future together, including the possibility of purchasing a house, having children, and embarking on memorable family vacations. We were excited about the prospect of these future experiences. However, on one evening when we returned to our apartment, I observed that she seemed distant. This struck me as unusual because we had always been affectionate with each other. The frequency of these incidents increased over time, occurring approximately once a week during the initial month following the proposal. However, it is important to note that I had previously consumed a considerable amount of content on Reddit, which may have influenced my perception of these occurrences. I initially attributed these instances to a temporary phase, assuming that they would only last a couple of hours and that she would revert to her usual demeanor. However, after 6 months of planning a wedding for a year later, she began exhibiting this behavior almost every night. Our sexual relationship remained satisfactory, and my relationship with her parents remained strong. However, during Thanksgiving at her parents' home in Louisville, Kentucky, which is located just north of Washington, D.C., she was distant and standoffish towards me in front of her mother. Consequently, her mother was perceptive enough to pull her daughter aside to have a talk. I could hear them arguing after they exchanged some intense but quiet words. They then rejoined the rest of the family and acted as though nothing had happened. I thought I could ask her about it later, so I did, but she didn't want to talk about it and asked me to wait until we got home to discuss it. I agreed because I love her. She was deeply convinced that we could overcome any obstacle. Her mother resembled her, but she was older. She had the same striking appearance, with the exception of a few gray hairs in her long, thick blonde hair. This detail became significant later, when we returned home. I raised the issue again, but she still did not want to discuss it. After persistently pressing her for a week, she finally admitted that a colleague at her workplace had. She was attempting to establish a closer relationship with me and therefore wished to be candid. Consequently, she exhibited her mobile telephone to me, which I perused. I observed that all the messages from the period when she was distant from me had been deleted. There was nothing suspicious in the messages, but I proceeded to enter her phone settings and activate the location tracker, as we had the same mobile phone plan. I was honestly of the opinion that this would provide me with reassurance. I was under the impression that she was not engaging in any illicit activities. However, it subsequently became apparent that I had been mistaken. On the second weekend after Thanksgiving, she had a company Christmas party that I had planned to attend with her. However, I was struck by food poisoning and was unable to go. Her friend came to pick her up from our apartment, as they were intending to have a wild night out and had arranged for a designated driver. I informed her that I wished her a good time. I informed her that I would see her in the morning. Consequently, I was experiencing severe abdominal discomfort and was unable to leave the toilet for more than 30 minutes despite feeling unwell. I retrieved my mobile phone and monitored her location. Initially, she was at a restaurant, then at the venue of the party, and later at a bar. I was not concerned about this until I observed her mobile phone cease at a hotel in the downtown area. At this point, I was experiencing a multitude of distressing symptoms, including projectile vomiting and emotional exhaustion. I eventually succumbed to sleep at approximately 2 a.m., only to awaken at 7 a.m. I observed that she was still at the hotel, and at noon, she finally returned home. I was feeling somewhat better, and she showered me with affection. I casually brought up the previous night without mentioning anything about it. She informed me of her whereabouts, stating that she had attended a restaurant party and bar. However, she subsequently claimed that she had gone to her friend's place to crash for the night. This was the first instance of her lying over the subsequent 3 months. She began working later and later, 3 to 4 days a week. As I began to question her about this, she became increasingly defensive. One evening, when my fiancée did not come home, she became visibly distressed. I returned home at a late hour. I spoke with her mother, who informed me that she had suspected her daughter of infidelity based on her interpretation of her body language. Furthermore, she mentioned that their weekly text conversations had become less frequent and more distant, which she attributed to her daughter's thoughts and suspicions. I decided to keep these thoughts to myself for the time being. 2 weeks later, something unexpected occurred at work. I was assigned a new project that required me to fly to the Midwest from Monday to Friday for the next 5 weeks, starting in 2 weeks. On top of that, it came with a salary increase. When I shared the news with my fiancée, she seemed genuinely happy for me. Little did I know that her excitement might have been due to reasons other than those I had anticipated. I then proceeded to purchase 4 motion-activated spy cameras for our apartment, strategically placing one in the living room entry area, one in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one that overlooked our hallway. These cameras were designed to be inconspicuous and connected to a hidden internet network, ensuring they could not be detected on our regular Wi-Fi. I configured the Wi-Fi network to require a password for access to the cameras, and then I simply waited, maintaining a watchful eye during my first week away. She had her girlfriends over for 2 nights, and she never had to work late. However, on the 3rd night, a man came over, which caused me great distress. I was sitting in my hotel room, screaming at the screen and using every possible insult against her. They ended up engaging in sexual intercourse on the couch and then in our bed. She contorted herself in ways I didn't even know were possible. The worst part was when I called her while watching. While observing her in action, she heard her phone ringing, which prompted her to pause and answer the call. I inquired as to why she was out of breath, and she informed me that she was at the gym working out. Upon the conclusion of the call, she immediately resumed her workout, which involved performing the dirty exercise. On Friday evening, I ignored her and went straight to bed. On Saturday, I awoke and went cycling without even realizing how far I was going. I was so upset that I ended up biking over 50 miles from our apartment, which was the longest distance I had ever cycled. My previous longest ride was only 30 miles, but on that day, I managed to go 105 miles. 6 miles when I returned, I was completely exhausted. I took a shower later that evening. She and I went out with our friends and we had a good time, consuming quite a bit of alcohol. Is it considered an act of breaking up when the person you're about to break up with is completely unaware? I was feeling overwhelmed inside, experiencing a range of emotions, including heartbreak, anger, rage, and betrayal. These emotions were swirling around in my heart and mind, causing me significant distress. It hurt so much because I loved her deeply. It was challenging to believe that she, who used to be so attentive, seemed completely unaware. I was initially unaware of the situation I was facing. Eventually, I confided in one of our mutual acquaintances, who informed me that they had been aware of the circumstances for several months. I was taken aback to learn that they had been aware of the situation yet had chosen to remain silent. This lack of communication was the reason behind their gradual cessation of invitations to socialize with us. Upon reflection, I realized that invitations had become less frequent approximately 3 months prior. This realization prompted me to take action to rekindle the relationship. The following weekend, I planned an elaborate weekend itinerary. In order to demonstrate our affection for her, we engaged in a series of lavish dinners, indulged in massages and engaged in heartfelt conversations about our future plans and my deep love for her. I could discern that I was making progress when, after her 4th glass of wine, she began to cry. This indicated that the guilt was surfacing. I inquired as to what was troubling her, but she was unable to articulate her thoughts due to the emotional distress. I reassured her that if there was something in her past or a conflict within her mind that she needed to address, she could do so. I was willing to listen and, if necessary, to forgive. However, the only words she managed to say were that she loved me. This was painful to hear, particularly given that I had 4 separate videos of her and the other man being close in our apartment during the following 8 weeks of my trips to the Midwest, which ended up lasting for 10 weeks in total. I recorded over 41 hours of her being close with the person I later found out was her co-worker. The worker was notable for her consistent punctuality, as she never had to work late during my absence. I endeavored to be particularly attentive on weekends, but with each passing week, she became increasingly distant. After witnessing this for 8 weeks, I reached a point of emotional exhaustion and devised a 12-step plan to break free. The first step was to gather evidence of her behavior. I then needed to get her out of the way to execute my plan, so I devised the idea of a week-long getaway trip for the 2 of us to an all-inclusive resort in Barbados had been planned. However, a week before the trip, I informed her that I was unable to attend and suggested that she take a friend instead. I was aware that our relationship was over when she expressed no disappointment at my cancellation. It was not until later that I discovered that I had already arranged for her. The next step was to find a replacement worker to accompany her on the trip. I needed to terminate our apartment lease, which conveniently expired 3 days into her trip. As the sole signatory on the lease, I was able to do this. Additionally, I had to find a job in another town. Fortunately, the company I had been assisting in the Midwest offered me a job with a slight salary increase. Finally, I had to find a new place to live. I managed to secure a place in the aforementioned location. When she's gone, here's what I plan to do: take her to the airport and return home to pack. On the same day, all her belongings were given a new phone number and a new phone number was issued to me. My phone and email were cancelled and all social media accounts were closed. Our finances were completely separated by withdrawing all money from our joint accounts and closing them. Her share was placed in an envelope packed with her belongings, which was also done on Monday. On Monday, arrangements were made for movers to pack up all my belongings and have them shipped out west. I would take all her belongings to her mother's house, which was about 600 miles away. Thankfully, everything she owned fit in the back and bed of my F-. From Tuesday to Saturday, I would provide the evidence to her mother and commence a new life. I was keen to ensure that I did not engage in any illegal activities, so I ensured that none of her belongings were misplaced. It was a challenging process to pack up all her belongings in an orderly manner. I had never experienced such a strong emotional response, with tears streaming down my face. I had read numerous accounts on Reddit about significant others promising to change after being caught, but I had never witnessed such a transformation. My hope was that she would genuinely I had hoped that she would confess so that we could forgive and move forward. However, she never did. On 2 occasions, she came close to revealing her secret, but her fear of the consequences prevented her from doing so. On Tuesday morning, I left our apartment, which was located north of Washington, D.C., for the final time. It took me 10 hours to reach her mother's house. What happened when I arrived at her mother's house caught me off guard. I arrived at her mother's house around 8 p.m. because I had not informed her in advance of my arrival. I thought that it would be a surprise for her because the couple resided in a gated community. I was required to buzz the house from the front gate as I drove up. She was waiting for me outside as soon as I approached her. I could see that she had been crying. I asked her what was wrong, and she hugged me while sobbing. She informed me that she suspected her husband was cheating on her with a younger, slimmer, and more attractive woman. I was completely stunned and just held her for about 10 minutes, her tears and runny nose soaking my shoulder. Once she had composed herself, I inquired as to whether we might enter the house and converse. We proceeded inside and I inquired as to the whereabouts of her husband. She informed me that he had claimed to be going fishing with his friends at a remote cabin situated an hour's drive away. She then added that he disliked fishing. She proceeded to enumerate the various indications that she had observed, indicating that the affair had been ongoing for approximately a year. We conducted some research and discovered a credit card charge for a luxury 5-star hotel. A call was made to a nearby star hotel, which was approximately 20 minutes away. This confirmed that her husband was indeed present, having arrived for a 4-night stay with his mistress. I informed her that her husband was cheating on her and that our daughter was also involved in an affair. This was the reason for my visit, to collect her belongings and to move out. I showed her the evidence I had compiled in a binder which included screenshots of all relevant material. After briefly looking through the first few pages of the evidence, she looked at me and said I was in a state of disbelief. We embraced each other and cried for approximately 30 minutes. She then suggested that we drown our sorrows by drinking 3 bottles of Moscato and engaging in sexual intercourse in every room of the house. She proceeded to grab 2 wine glasses and a bottle of Moscato wine and headed out to their private pool deck. She inquired as to whether I was joining her out there or if I wanted to seek revenge. I will not provide too much detail because I do not wish to be explicit. However, that night and for the following 3 days, we engaged in sexual intercourse. I ceased my explorations of her body, which I had previously examined in great detail. We had reached a state of sexual arousal on at least 25 occasions during that period. Once the days of our liaison had come to an end, we exchanged a passionate farewell. I then proceeded to my new destination, while she informed me of the developments that had occurred since our separation. My fiancée returned on the day of her return, which was memorable. I had disconnected my telephone that morning, so when she arrived and attempted to call for a lift, the telephone showed that it was disconnected. It transpired that she had arranged for her lover to give her a lift home. He left when she arrived at the door, and she was met by a couple she did not recognize. The new tenants answered, and she became distressed. She made several attempts to call me, but since my number was no longer active, she was unable to reach me. She subsequently stayed with her girlfriends for a while, as her the worker, in a state of distress, contacted her mother, who informed her that I had delivered all her belongings, including her money, which was now 600 miles away. It was not made clear to the worker that her mother had been in closer contact with me than her fiancé had been over the previous 6 months. However, the worker's mother did reveal that she was aware of the worker's infidelity and that I had found a new job, a new place to live and a new career that was far away from her and our son. She also informed me that she was separating from her father due to infidelity. It seems that she was in a state of distress for several days and even took a week off from work. However, she ultimately sought solace in the arms of her married lover. My mother never disclosed my whereabouts to her. I had completely severed ties with that chapter of my life. The only remaining connection I had to that past was through my fiancé's mother. My fiancé's abrupt termination of our relationship, which occurred shortly after I had initiated contact with my former partner, has remained a closely guarded secret to this day. The timing of the events that enabled me to leave her was fortuitous. The end of the lease, the acquisition of a new phone plan, and the coincidence of these events allowed me to leave her without any significant disruption to my life. Had any of these events occurred at a different time, the outcome could have been drastically different. Let us now turn to the events that transpired after my departure from the relationship. My fiancé's mother and I maintained communication for several months as we both experienced the dissolution of our relationships and observed a form of retribution against our respective partners. However, neither of our partners became aware of the developments between my ex-fiancé's mother and me after 7 months in my new location. My fiancé's mother eventually came to visit me. However, I wish to clarify that, to the disappointment of many, we only conversed. We both expressed regret for what had transpired between us, recognizing that it was a consequence of the past and the intensity of the moment. Indeed, there were many intense moments. She informed me that her daughter was aware of her whereabouts and was distressed that she had not revealed my location. She inquired as to whether she could inform my former partner. My fiancé was aware of my whereabouts and provided her with a way to contact me. However, I requested that she refrain from informing her because I had moved on to my new life. My fiancé's mother and I engaged in extensive discourse regarding the potential for her and her partner to reconcile and resolve their differences. She disclosed that her husband was profoundly remorseful and had divulged all the relevant information. She expressed that this was a significant challenge for her and inquired about his plan to rebuild her trust. In response, he provided her with all his digital passwords and permitted her to view all the damaging actions he had taken against their marriage. Despite her initial anger, his mother acknowledged his efforts to repair their relationship. She stated that forgiveness would require time, but rebuilding trust would necessitate even more effort. His perspective shifted when she confronted him about the affair and presented evidence of his actions towards me. It is also noteworthy that his former the fiancé's mother was an exceptional woman in every conceivable way. Furthermore, she made it clear that if he ever transgressed the boundaries of their marriage again, she would reserve the right to do the same. He became aware of the term once more and requested an explanation. She revealed that, upon discovering his infidelity, she had engaged in a brief sexual relationship with the first eligible man she encountered. This revelation caused him immense distress. The fiancé's mother disclosed that they both shed copious tears and resolved to separate temporarily, allowing each other time to collect their thoughts and determine whether they wished to persevere with their marriage. They subsequently sought marriage counseling, and as of May 2020, they remain together. With regard to my former partner, my fiancée was profoundly distressed by my actions. Upon returning to her parents' residence to retrieve her belongings, she discovered evidence of the affair, which caused her considerable embarrassment. My ex-fiancé's mother had to edit the binder, removing inappropriate pictures to spare her father from seeing them. Nevertheless, my ex was devastated. It wasn't until months later that she discovered her mother had my contact information. She begged her mother for it, causing significant strain in their relationship. However, her mother also warned her that if she attempted to find me or contact me, I would release all the evidence permanently on the internet. This insistence from my ex, the acquisition of my information by my fiancé, was the catalyst for her visit. She was also distressed by the difficulties her parents were experiencing in their marriage. According to her, her former fiancé was depressed for several months and sought counseling to cope with it. Upon her return from her parents' place in Louisville, Kentucky, she terminated the relationship. The individual in question was previously employed and commenced a search for a new position in December 2019. It was revealed that she had entered into a marriage and had subsequently given birth to 2 daughters, who were twins. The individual's mother stated that she currently resides in the D.C. area and works from home, indicating that she is content with her new circumstances. I am gratified that she was able to resolve her difficulties and find happiness once more. I recently decided to dispose of all the incriminating evidence I had on my ex-fiancé because I did not wish to be the type of person who would hold someone hostage for the rest of their life. I requested that her mother convey this message to my ex. If I were in her position and received such information, it would have caused me significant distress. As for myself, I am content with my current circumstances. My former fiancé's mother and I spoke on a regular basis at the outset, but now we communicate only once or twice a year. Our interactions are typically brief notes updating each other on minor changes in our lives. The only unanswered question for me is whether my former fiancé's mother, it is possible that had the marriage of the ex-fiancé's mother and her husband been able to be repaired, the same might have been true of the ex-fiancé and I. However, I never gave it the chance. It is only possible to speculate as to whether our lives would have been different had we been able to repair our relationship.